In this video, we're going to focus on how we can use all of this data that we use for Chartjs to create a beautiful table here showing with the values. As you can see here, the values are nicely matching 12 and you can see 9, 12, 6, etc, etc. Plus making sure that we just extract some of these colors here, for example the border color, and apply it in here. So we're going to create this table pure with JavaScript only. So let's start to explore how to do this. So let's start to create a table from our dataset in Chartjs. To do this, first of all, we need to get our default code here, which is the Chartjs 3.com link, getting started. Make sure you go in there and you can find the link as well in the description box. And what we want here basically is this chunk of code. We're going to copy this. And if you want to understand what this code does, make sure you watch this video that explains it all. So I'm going to paste this in here and then cut this out. Put it in there. Alright, save this and then refresh, and now we have a basic bar chart. So what I want to do now is to create basically a table from this data, and to make it a bit more exciting, we can just add up another item here so you can see that they are both working. So we're going to put in two data sets, and I'll say one is the cost and the other one is the weekly sales. Alright, so just give it some different numbers: 9, 6, 3, 4.5, 6, 1.5, 4.5. Save that, refresh, there we are. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is start working on it. This here, you have to pay attention because this can be a bit tricky. So first of all, I want to create a function here. I will call this the createTable. And this createTable function is basically blank, and what I will do here, just to immediately activate it, I'm going to just copy this and put it in here as a function to load this function at once. So if I do here just a console log, you will see that this function has been triggered at once. Triggered. Save, refresh, open up the developer tab here. You can see here, if I refresh, again, there you are. It shows it's being triggered. Alright, so what are we going to do now is, first of all, you need to start to figure out where we want to position it. And in my case, what I will do, is based on the question from one of the viewers, is to position it just below the chart itself. And so what I'm going to do here, I'm not going to create a div here with the item, or at least not in HTML. But basically in this chart box, we're going to create a div eventually with the name of where the table will be in. So to do this, I'm going to do only in JavaScript itself. So first of all, what I want to do then is I need to first define where I want to put it in. Where do I want to put it in? Well, I'm going to put it in this div here. In essence, what I'm going to do is just basically create a div here, like this. But we're going to work from JavaScript. So I'm going to copy this. That's the class. So I'm going to say here, constant chart box equals, let me say a document dot query selector. And this basically means we're going to search any document, and then the query would be basically meaning a search. For a selector, and in this case, a selector can be a class, can be an ID, can be an element. But in our case, it will be the class with the class name. That's why we have a dot here, chart box. So once we have this, we have selected that, and then in here I want to create a new element, which is called a div, and that div will be inserted in this chart box here. So what I'm going to do here is, let's say here constant, and let's give this the name table div equals document dot create, and we're going to create an element, and the element here will be a div. So I use here caps locks, but you can use small letters, doesn't matter. Just here for emphasizing it so you can see exactly what it is. So now we have basically created this, and of course we didn't yet add it up. So what I want to do now is I want to just put this in this chart box here. So I'm going to say here append. Basically we're going to append it in here. So to do this, I'm going to say chart box dot, then here append, so that's the correct spelling, child. So basically what we're really saying here, append means to attach to the child, or attach the child. So we're going to say here, this table div is in essence the child of the chart box. So this is the parent, or the parent element, and this here will append a child to this parent element. And if we're talking about appending, basically you can see it like nested div. So basically this chart box was at the div class equals chart box, and then what we're doing here is just we nested in another div, and then here closing div, etc., etc. I guess you get the point here, so I don't have to type that out at all. So if I do this and I save this now and refresh, open up developer tab, we should be able to see now a div in here. That's this div here. Alright, so we have one div now that is not written in here, as you can see. So this is just added up. Alright, so to make really sure that this is the correct div, I want to give this div a proper class name or an ID name. Well, let's do both. We can basically give this a well, I guess a ID name here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say a table div, and this table div will get the set attributes. Basically here we're going to say the ID, and what are we going to do? We're going to add up the ID as an attribute, and then comma what will be the ID name. In this case I'll just be very simplistic by saying table div. By doing this, we have now assigned the ID in here. So basically we have created an ID here. So if I save this now, refresh, you can see here now we get a table div. Alright, so one more thing that maybe might be, because you might want to know this, especially if you want to add classes. How do you add a class as well? So let's do that one as well. What we could do here, well, maybe I will do that in a different one. So I'm going to create now a table. So I'm going to say a table is, and this will be a document dot create element, and this element is the table element. And then what I want to do for the table element, well, let's put that down here. Then the table element will get a nice class. So I'm going to say here table, which is the variable itself or the constant, dot, then we say here class list with capital L dot add, and then what I want to add here, maybe we say chart.js table. Doing this, we have created a table, but of course we didn't append it, because what I want to do, I want to append this in there. Then we will see here nicely. So let's get this div table append or add the child. And what is the child? Well, in this case, it is table. That's the one. So if I now save this, refresh, you can see here now we have a div ID of table div, and then we have a table with a class name of table or Chartjs table. Of course, nothing else in here. So what we're going to do now is start working on creating it, and this is the most tricky part. So what I'm going to do here now is the following. Now the first thing what we're going to do now is, well, I guess what we need to do here is add up the header and the item here, because right now we have the table. But what about the T-head, or basically the header table section? So what I'm really going to do is this. So let me just show you some code here, at least let me have that nicely. So what I want to do here is basically table, then here we have closing table, then here of course what we get here is the T-head, and the T-head is the first one that we want to have, and there we are. And then between here we might have this. Let's see, so I'm making it as visual as possible so you can quickly see it. We can do here probably TR and closing TR, and then of course between there what I want here is eventually the table data. Alright, so that's what we're going to do. So to do this, what I want then is basically to create many elements, but in Chartjs, sorry, not in Chartjs, but in JavaScript, they have a special table object. So we are basically creating elements, but we don't use this command. There's a special built-in command for JavaScript to create a table, which is absolutely phenomenal. So what we're going to do now is basically start with it. So let's say here, let's add the table head. And what we're going to do here is we say constant T-head equals, and then basically table, and then we're going to say a dot create th with capital, and then head or T-head, but this is basically meaning the table head, but make sure that T and H are caps lock. Once we do this, we basically have created our table header. So if I save this, and then we already have appended everything, so we don't have to append it again, you can see here now we have our table head without even the need to append it, because automatically it will be added in the table element. So next one here then is, what are we going to do here is, I want to add up a class. So let's say here, just for the sake of it, thead, which is the table head, and I want to make sure that the table head should have dot class list dot add, and then here, just for the sake of it, we're going to copy this one, but then we say here thead. Alright, so now we have this one here, we have the class. So what I want to do now is basically add the labels. So what we need to grab here is we have to really think, how are we going to display it? Well, the first one should be blank, or maybe we can just put in like this, maybe day, because that's the day. And then every other one, it should be a loop basically here. This would be Monday, and then everything on, keep on going. So that's the first row. In the next row, which would be then the table body or the T-body. But we're not done yet with this, so we will not jump to T-body yet. So what we're going to do now is the following. I'm going to say here thead dot insert row, which is a special command as well, and we want to put the row at the very top. So once we did this, what I'm going to do now is the following. Oh, well, if I say we save or refresh this, let's save that, we should have here, do we have something? You can see now we have the TR. So basically we have done this one now. So now we have to nest it in the final one here. So what we're going to do here is a, what I would say a for loop. Why? Because we want to insert basically all of these numbers here. So I'm going to create a for loop. And I'm going to say in the for loop here, let I equals 0. Then I'm going to say I, and we will loop this based on what? So our array of this here. We have all of this. And if to get here, the easiest way is just go from data.labels. So let's go back here and let's comment out, and let me just show you what I'm talking about. Console log. There's a data.labels. Save that, and then refresh. So you can see here now in the console log, let's go to console log, we get here the array with all the items. Alright, so then we have this. So basically this will be essential for us. I'm going to show this again, and then we say here this dot length, so we will get the length of 7. So then we have this here, and then I will just say here I++, so we iterate it, and then we keep on iterating as long as this condition matches. So then what I want to do here is the following. I want to start to create in the table or the thead row. So I need to select the row, and the row, what I want is row number, well, basically the first one, which would be index 0. That's very important to understand. Oh, let me do this. Let's undo that one. All right. So here we're going to get row index 0. So I'm going to say a thead, and then we say here dot rows. This is a command in JavaScript to select a specific row index. And then here we get index row of 0, which is the very first one. And once we did this, then I will say here the following. I want to insert cell. Remember, this is a special command based in JavaScript, specifically for the table. So we're going to create then the table data. That's basically this command, insert a cell here. However, what I'm going to do here, because this is a for loop, I want to put in here an I. So we will get eventually 7 items in here. And what we want to do then is dot inner text equals data dot labels index I. Doing this, and then we have this here. If I save this, let's see now what happened. There you are. So now we get this, and if I open up here this inspector element and search for this, you will see here, and then you might say, hold on, we have a problem here, because we're missing the front here. This should be like the day, or like something as a description, and as I indicated here. What are we going to do now? Well, let me show you how we can do this, and this is very nice. So I'm going to put here a semicolon. Next thing what I want to do here is I'm going to again add up a new item in the table head. So we're going to say again rows 0, which is just the first row, still in the same table row. And then here, I'm going to do the following. I'm going to say here, insert a new cell, and this cell will be positioned at the very beginning, meaning that everything else will jump 1 to the right. So basically, what we're really doing here is like a, if I'm not mistaken, the unshift method. In essence, you can see there's an unshift method. We will insert it at the very beginning of the array. And this is what we're doing here. Basically inserting it at the very beginning of the table row. So then here, I'll say again dot inner text, and this inner text will be days. Save this, refresh, and there we are. Alright, so don't worry about the design. We can still fine tune it. I will fine tune it very basic later on. So now we have basically done our table head, and I think now it's time to work on not the table head, but the table T-body. So what I want to do eventually is have T-body here, and then of course here I want to get, well, what I need to get here in the beginning is this value here, the weekly cost or the label. So one would be weekly cost, and the other one would be weekly sale. So we need to have 2 items here. So that will be a slightly tricky one, and here should be the number whatever is matching, which is basically all these data points that we have here. Alright, so how are we going to do this? So in here, what I'm going to do now is we're going to say a T-body. And we're going to work on the T-body section. So first of all, we're going to say constant T-body equals. And here, we're going to do exactly the same. We're going to say table dot create T-body instead of T-head. And then make sure the T-body here, T, or which is the table, and then we have the B for the body caps locks. And so now we have this here. So once we do this, if I save this now and refresh, let's look at it. There we are. We close now the head, and now JavaScript indicated so that HTML understands, all right, we have now a table body tag. So that's what we're going to work on next. So what we're going to do here is basically the following. First of all, I want to give it very similar to what we did with the T-head. I'm going to give this again a class, but I want to say here T-body, and this will be the T-body as well as Chartjs -T-body. So later on we can just give it a nice design later on. So if I refresh here now, you can see here T-body has the class of T-body. Beautiful. So now we have this all working. So what is the next part? Well, the next part is starting to add up the data labels. So what we need to do here is the following. We're going to say here, we're going to create basically a map method. Why? What we need to do here is we're going to run through an array, and this array is basically the entire data set here. So from data.datasets, because we have here 2 data sets, remember. So and what we need here basically is this value and this value here. So what we're going to do here is the following. First of all, I'm going to say here data.datasets, and the reason why, I'm going to put in map here. So the reason why is basically with this, we're then looping through the data sets, and let me just show you what I'm talking about. Because we have 2 data sets, that will mean that we need to loop through the table and make 2 rows instead of 1. So if I do a console log here and just say here data.datasets, save that, refresh here, go to console log. So then you can see here we get here the 2 specific data sets as an array. So with this, and that's why we're going to use this map feature here. With that, we can start to work on more items. So what I'm going to do here, first of all, I'm going to type in map, and we have 2 parentheses here, and this is the function arrow expression. Now what I'm going to do here is basically, which is this here, would be in a shorthand, so we say data set, comma index. So we have these 2, so because they might be necessary, then here curly braces, and then enter. So what we're going to do here is the following. We have to really think of a few items, because let's look at it. We're going to create a row, but we have created the upper row here. So that will mean that the next row is not allowed to be here up. So we need to be just below here. So that will be the, or if this is the first row, then we have a second and a third one for the 2 data sets. So that will mean that we need to think how we can do this. Well, luckily we can do it quite easy by just saying let value, and the value would be index, which is basically index 0 and index 1, plus 1. Why? So then we get index 1 and index 2, which is then exactly matching, because this is row. If you look at it here, the row, the first row here is basically row 0, and then the next one here would be row 2, well, number 1 and number 2. So that's how you have index 1 and index. Well, if you loop through that, it will keep on looping through this. Anyway, later on you will see it, so once it's visual, it makes more sense. So what we're going to do here now is the following. We're going to say your tBody, and then dot, we say your insert row, and then we say here value. By doing this, and then we just say here save and refresh. Alright, so we get an error here. I guess insert row on the... Alright, I have to just check on this one. Let's see what's going on here. Oh, alright, sorry. We don't have to do this. And the reason why is we have now basically my mistake. We can just keep this on index, I guess. And the reason why is this. Because it will recalculate based on the data of the tBody. So I was looking at this and with the T hat here we have the row, but basically when you were working with a new table body, it considers again a count from the very beginning. So if I save this now, then it should work. There we are. Let's confirm this. I do see some extra space here. And if I go in here, tBody, table row 1, table row index 0, and table row index 1. Beautiful. So it works all nice. So sorry about that. Don't focus on that. Not necessary, because we have here the table header. Alright. So now what we want to do next is basically continue on with the for loop. And in the for loop we're going to say here the following. We're going to say here for, and then we're going to do again let I equals 0, and then we keep on looping through this as long as the following. So what we want to do now is we're going to focus specifically on the data set. So we have the data set here. So we're going to say here this is the data set, and then we can say here dot, let's see, how do we get there? So we are here from data set, and then for example we want to grab the data. So dot data. So once we have this here, and then what I want to say, of course, here dot length. And if I do this, we should have here now the right length, semicolon, and then here I plus plus. Alright, so then we have this here, and what are we going to do in here is basically we know now how many times we need to loop through this, because basically we have to loop through all this data. And then here what I'm going to say is tBody dot rows, and the rows here will be based on the item as well. So we have here this index that shows here, but remember there's only a data, we have 2 data sets only. This one here is specifically for the, we need to put in here I, because this is specifically for the data itself in the data set. So this is very important, and I'm figuring out that maybe this might give us an error because there are 2 items in here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to change this one. Why? Because there's like a double array in here. And I was just thinking, am I making a mistake here? But yes, I am. So let me explain what we need. We need just a single one. Because first of all, I'm going to expect that all these data in the bar are identical. Even if you have one that is missing, it probably will be like a blank. But of course, in the table, you still want to show the blank value. So what I'm going to do is I just go from data to data sets, and then we just grab one of the data sets. Let's say data set 0, and then the data. So I'm going to say here data.datasets index 0, and then dot data, and then we say length. So this is very important, because if you don't do it, it will loop twice through this item as well twice, and it will be you will get probably an error. So we don't want that. So we already need this. All we want to know is the length of 7. That's it. That's all we need to know. So now we have this one here, and then we're going to say here dot insert, and then here we're going to just basically again insert cell, and the insert cell again will be an I. There's a dot inner sorry, not HTML, inner text is better. And equal here, what will be equal? It will be equal to the data set that we have here. We can use that one, and dot data index I. So we loop through this, basically looping through the specific value here of all of these. So then we have this here. All right, where are we? There we are. Then we have this here, and what do we want to do then? Well, what I can do here, just save it and refresh. All right, so it gives an error now. Fair enough, because we're still missing a few items. Cannot read the property of undefined reading insert cell. All right, so that's all right. Let's ignore that for now. What we want to do here is first, well, we want to have here the I guess here the insert cell, and then we have to double check here the row. What I'm going to do here is basically what we want to do here is as well the data label, but I guess I need to figure out first why we have this error here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pause the video for a second. Alright, so I already figured it out. So this is a mistake on my side, so sorry about that. Basically, this I here is wrong. So let me explain why this is wrong, and then you will understand. Because remember, we're making 2 rows in here. And then here, we're looping through these rows here. But what happened? We're only making 2 rows, while this here has a length of 7. So here it starts to create 7 rows. And of course, it gives an error. So what I need to do here, copy this index, put it in here. Because I want in row 0 just to have 7 cells. And then in the next row, also 7 cells. And what I'm doing here is I'm making 7 rows with 7 cells. That doesn't make any sense, of course. Sorry about that. That's the tiny mistake here, but that's alright. So now we have this, and if I just save this now and refresh, there you are. You can see now we get the data. However, we're still missing the very first at the beginning, as you can see here. So that's what we're going to do next. So how do we do this? Well, basically in here, we're going to grab this. We can just copy this entire item here, and all I want here, basically leave all of this in here, but here we go to indicate here the following, where we can just say a 0, and then what I want to do here is the following, equal. So why I'm doing here 0? First of all, remember this is this item, and this insert cell 0 will push it at the very beginning. So it will push the cells, all the other cells to the right side, and this one will be put at the very beginning. Just think like the unshift method for the arrays. So then here, what I want here is basically the name of the item, which is this here. How do you get there? From datasets, we go to label. And then label, we get weekly sales, and the other one will be weekly cost. So then here, .that, there we are. So once I save this, semicolon here, refresh, and there we are. So now we have created our table, but of course we should have at least make it a little bit more appealing. And then what I want to do as well, I want to show you one of the tricks how we can maybe extract some of these colors and put them in here. And this is just an extra bonus, just so you learn something additional. So now we have everything here working very nice. Let's start to make the CSS first, and then the final additional item. So what we're going to do now here is basically this. In the CSS, I'm going to say here, well, remember we have added the classes in here, so this makes it very easy. So if I click on remove that one and just go in here, but we have a class here, we have this class, and it's a chart.js dash table. And what I will do here, I'll just make it something very simple, and if you want to go more advanced, I might make that eventually, just let me know. But I believe this is the easier part. So I'm just going to make this. Nothing fancy, and this is not 100% accurate. Normally you can be more specific, but of course you can add your own classes with that. You should know now how. So what I'm going to do here, very simple, just say border collapse. And this border collapse will be collapse. So these borders will be nicely on top of each other, so we don't have some space between them or some padding, what you can call them. Next, what I want to do here is a border of 1 pixel and just say solid black. And then here, what we can say here, maybe a padding of 10 pixels. Save this, refresh. Alright, that looks slightly better. Next, what I want to do, because this is the table header, remember, that's this one here. As you can see, I want this nicely bold. While the others should be not bold, but I want to put all of these values, including the title here, centered. So let's start and do this one. So the next one item will be the Chartjs thead. .thead, oh sorry, I don't want this, I just want this class name. We say .thead, and then in the thead, we're going to say the following, let's say font weight bold. Alright, so nothing fancy. Save this, refresh. There we are. Final item would be the .chartjs dash body or tBody. Remember, that's it. This one here. If I go down here, tBody, there was the class as well. And let's say here, text align equal center. Save that, refresh. Now everything is nicely centered. Final item here. This is the last challenge in JavaScript. Let's grab the border colors and insert them in here. So for that, I cannot use CSS. What I need to do here is just JavaScript. So I'm going here in JavaScript, and then what I'm going to do here at the table head or the T head, let's see, we could do it probably in here. Let me remove this console log. We don't need this one. And then we can just put it, I would say, just above the tBody. In here, what I'm going to say is the following. Oh, sorry, that should not be in here. Why? It needs to be in here in the loop, because we have here the loop with the I, and what we really want to do is basically this. So we have this, but then we have the colors. We want to just grab, I would just grab one of these colors, assuming that all these colors are similar. That's why this is just an extra exercise, but we're going to grab this color and then index depending on how to get there from data, and then to datasets, index 0, and then the border color. So in here, I'm going to say a dot, and what I want to do here is the rows. So we're going to select the rows, and the rows is row 0, meaning the very first row in the table header. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to select the cells, but the cells here will be with the I, and the reason why is basically here the cells, it's very similar to rows. We're selecting it, but we're going to select depending on the loop, which is cell 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and up to 6 or 7, from 0 to 6 basically, because that's an index for array. Alright, so then here we're going to say style.color equal, and then here we'll do data.dataset index 0 and border color. The border color will be based on the I value, which is a loop, so it will get the specific value matching of this. So if I refresh here, there we are. You can see now we get the color showing here nicely, and this is basically how we can control with the tables, how to create tables. I know that another question regarding to this was how we can get the labels down. Well, we can go do that quickly. Plugins, let's go here in the plugins. Then we say here legend, and we say here position, then this string value bottom, comma here, save that, refresh, and there we are. And then maybe we can put it to the left side. So to push it to the left side, what we can do here, instead of then besides position, say align, and then here should be start. Save this. Make sure you have a comma here, by the way, or else you get an error. Refresh, and there we are. So now we have this and created our own table based on the data and replaced our legend nicely at the bottom. So if you enjoyed this video and maybe you want, for example, like say this legend here, you don't like this legend, you want to make an HTML version of it, I have a video here that explains how to create a dynamic HTML legend in Chartjs, which I highly recommend if necessary.